Imagine this. Rome, year 222 AD. Torches light up the camp of the Praetorian Guard. Amid drums and tense silence, an 18-year-old teenager crosses the gates, believing he is about to receive honors. He does not know that, in reality, he is walking straight into an ambush. His fate is already sealed. This young man is Marcus Aurelius Antoninus Augustus, known to history as Elagabalus, the emperor who defied all Roman traditions, and paid the most brutal price. A boy who, in just 4 years, went from being a priest in an Eastern temple to becoming the most powerful man in the world, and then, the most hated enemy of his own empire. But what is truly remarkable was not his short life, but the way he chose to rule. He replaced the gods of Rome with a foreign cult, turned the palace into a stage for scandalous rituals, and forced the most powerful elite on the planet to submit to his excesses. And the most disturbing, a wedding ceremony that horrified the Senate and sparked the beginning of his downfall. It wasn't a battle that condemned him, it was a wedding. In this video, you will discover how a teenager managed to ascend to the most coveted throne of antiquity, how he turned his reign into a spectacle of excess that unleashed hatred and conspiracies, and why Rome attempted to erase his name from history through damnatio memoriae. Stay tuned, because what you are about to hear is one of the darkest and most forgotten stories of the Roman Empire. And in the end, you will ask yourself, was it his religion, his abuses, or his arrogance that truly condemned him? Backhand index pointing right if this topic intrigues you as much as it does me. Like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next hidden secrets of Rome. The Factory of Power. Long before Rome had heard his name, it all began in the sands of Syria, in the city of Emesa, today Homs. There stood the temple of Elagabalus, a sun god whose symbol was not a statue or human image, but a black conical stone, which the faithful claimed had fallen from the sky. This object, wrapped in mystery, was not just an idol, it was a source of political power. It attracted pilgrims from across the empire, and with them came caravans loaded with gold, spices, eastern silks, and slaves. The temple functioned as a bank, a marketplace, and a center of influence. But what most unsettled the Romans was another practice, ritual prostitution. Young people of both sexes were offered as part of sacred ceremonies, a brutal contrast to the sober religion of Rome. This is how Elagabalus grew up, surrounded by wealth, power, and rituals that Romans would call abominations. At the heart of this story is a woman, Julia Maesa, grandmother of Elagabalus. Sister of the influential Empress Julia Domna, Maesa knew the secrets of imperial power better than anyone. When Caracalla, her nephew and emperor of Rome, was assassinated, the family was sent into exile. But Maesa was not willing to lose everything. Instead of resigning herself, she planned a masterstroke, to use the 14-year-old priest as a piece on the political chessboard. She had the essentials, the temple's gold, a family with imperial ties, and a grandson trained from childhood to appear as a divine being. She was the silent architect of everything that would follow. But how do you make soldiers believe in a teenager? The answer was propaganda. Maesa spread the rumor that Elagabalus was not only the grandson of a powerful dynasty, but the illegitimate son of Emperor Caracalla. Whether this was true or not mattered little, in times of uncertainty, rumors are worth more than the truth. Coins were minted with his face, processions were organized in which he appeared dressed in imperial robes, and Syrian rituals were combined with Roman symbols. Before the troops, he did not present himself as a mere boy, but as a being marked by the gods, heir by both blood and divinity. In the early hours of May 16, 218, Julia Maesa brought her grandson to the camp of the 3rd Legion in Raphanea. There, in an almost theatrical act, the soldiers proclaimed Elagabalus emperor, who from that day adopted the official name Marcus Aurelius Antoninus Augustus. The legitimate emperor, Macrinus, was not going to sit idly by. He gathered his troops in Antioch. What followed was a brief but bloody civil war. Although Elagabalus's forces were smaller in number, they had two lethal advantages: the temple's gold, which bought betrayals and loyalties, and religious propaganda that convinced the troops they were fighting for a divinely chosen one. The battle ended in a bloodbath. Macrinus was defeated, captured, and executed along with his son. And a 14-year-old boy became emperor of the greatest empire in the world. But the methods he used to seize power, bribery, religious manipulation, and early cruelty, already foreshadowed what was to come. When Elagabalus arrived in Rome in 219, he did not come as an emperor seeking to integrate into the city's millennia-old traditions, but as a religious conqueror willing to change everything. He ordered the construction of a massive temple on the Palatine Hill, next to the imperial palace itself, and placed there the most sacred object of his cult, the black stone of Emesa. But he didn't stop at adding a new god to the Roman pantheon. He declared Elagabalus the supreme god and forced Rome's most venerated symbols, the eternal flame of Vesta, Mars's sacred shields, even the Palladium that supposedly protected Troy, to be transferred to his new sanctuary. It was like telling all of Rome, "Your gods kneel before mine." The emperor turned the capital into a living theater. During his processions, he wore Eastern robes embroidered with gold and precious stones, dragged sacred chariots, and forced senators to participate in ritual dances that, for them, were humiliating indignities. The ceremonies included frenzied chants, self-flagellation, and sexual rituals in which young men and women participated as part of the cult. What for Elagabalus was devotion to the sun god, for the Romans was blasphemy. The Roman elite, accustomed to solemnity and discipline, were now forced to move to the rhythm of a teenager using imperial power as a stage for his personal spectacle. And if his religious reforms were already a challenge, his private life was a true earthquake for Rome. In just 4 years, Elagabalus entered into 5 marriages, each more controversial than the last. First with Julia Cornelia Paula, an aristocrat, seeking legitimacy. Then with Aquilia Severa, a Vestal virgin, which scandalized the city deeply, as Vestals were required to remain chaste under penalty of death. Finally, with Hierocles, a blonde slave of Carian origin, whom he made his husband and advisor. In that ceremony, the emperor himself assumed the role of wife, calling himself queen and lover. These gestures were not mere youthful whims, they were direct provocations to the Senate, the military, and the entire system of Roman values. Each marriage sent a message of power, a way of making it clear that he could trample Rome's most sacred norms without consequence, or at least that's what he believed. The senators hated him, the priests feared him, and even the Praetorian soldiers began to murmur. Rome existed in a state of constant unease. The emperor not only ruled but seemed to enjoy publicly humiliating those around him. Elagabalus had turned the empire's capital into a living temple of his god and a stage of excess that no one could ignore. But all of this was nothing compared to what he was about to do. Up until that moment, Rome had endured religious humiliations, scandalous marriages, and strange rituals. But in the year 220, Elagabalus took a step that horrified even his own allies. He forced his cousin Alexianus, barely 12 years old, to participate in a marriage ceremony. Chronicles describe that the boy was dressed in female robes and presented as an imperial bride. Senators and officials were forced to witness the ritual, and many left outraged, convinced that the emperor had crossed an unforgivable line. Beyond the act itself, what truly marked a turning point was the political impact. Rome no longer saw an eccentric emperor, but a tyrant using his own family as an instrument of humiliation and power. The same woman who had brought her grandson to the throne, Julia Misa, realized that her creation had become a monster threatening the survival of the dynasty. Cunningly, she began promoting Alexianus, the victim of the forced marriage, as a legitimate alternative to succeed the emperor. Presenting him as heir was a way to save the family and, at the same time, unite the Senate and the military against Elagabalus. She was the one who convinced the emperor to officially adopt his cousin as Caesar, heir to the throne, a move that, unbeknownst to him, was the first nail in his own coffin. Elagabalus soon began to suspect that something was being plotted. He secretly ordered Alexianus's assassination, but the Praetorian Guard refused to obey. Worse still, many soldiers already showed more respect to the young heir than to the emperor himself. Furious, he threatened to disband the Praetorian Guard and replace it with Syrian soldiers loyal only to him. That was his ultimate mistake. By challenging the men who protected his life, he sealed his own death sentence. In March of the year 222, the Praetorians summoned the emperor and Alexianus to a loyalty ceremony at their camp. Elagabalus agreed to attend, convinced he still had authority. But when he arrived, the soldiers honored only Alexianus. The emperor, humiliated, reacted with fury and ordered the execution of everyone present. That was the exact moment his reign ended. The very guards who had hailed him in his youth drew their swords. They attacked him brutally, along with his mother, Julia Soaemias. Their bodies were decapitated, dragged through the streets, and thrown into the Tiber River. On March 11, 222, Rome witnessed the end of one of its darkest chapters. Elagabalus, the teenage emperor who had tried to subjugate the gods of Rome to a foreign stone, was killed by his own guards. His body and his mother's were dragged, mutilated, and thrown into the Tiber as if they were enemies of the state. But the vengeance did not end there. The Senate decreed a damnatio memoriae, the official erasure of his name and image. His statues were destroyed, his inscriptions hammered out, and all memory of him removed from public records. Rome wanted him to have never existed. In his place, young Alexianus, barely a teenager, was proclaimed emperor under the name Severus Alexander. Paradoxically, the boy who had been a victim of the regime's humiliations became a symbol of hope for the empire. However, the trauma of what he had lived through stayed with him forever. Chroniclers note that Alexander ruled with caution and moderation but never freed himself from the shadow of his cousin or the abuses he suffered in childhood. Rome could erase Elagabalus's name, but not the scars he left on those around him. The case of Elagabalus is not just the story of an extravagant young emperor. It is a reminder of the price of absolute power when exercised without limits or alliances. His religious reforms show how dangerous it is to impose radical changes without understanding tradition. His private excesses reveal how the personal can become a political weapon capable of destroying empires. And his violent end demonstrates that even the most powerful man in the world depends on the loyalty of those around him. Rome tried to erase his name, but his figure remains alive because it embodies the most feared warning: when power and arrogance combine, destruction is inevitable. Thus ended the life of a teenage emperor who challenged Rome and its gods, and lost. Centuries later, we still remember what Rome tried to bury in oblivion. The question is inevitable: can someone truly be erased from history, or is the very attempt to forget what keeps them alive in our memory? If this story impacted you, like, subscribe, and share this video so more people can discover the hidden secrets of the Roman Empire. And get ready, because in the next episode we will explore other emperors condemned to oblivion by the damnatio memoriae.